back to Light on America. I'm Pat Micone, president of the Republican Club of Laguna Woods, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Kendall, who's our vice president of programs for our Republican Club. We are here to bring truth and to dispel misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that surrounds so many issues of our day. And that the mainstream media, you may not be hearing it in mainstream media news.
Right. Speaking of truth, we have a good example to report on that you might not have seen in the mainstream media, and it's surrounding the testimony of a former staff person in the Trump White House that she worked for Mark Meadows, and it shows you how totally misinformed people can be if they don't get to see both sides of an issue. So let's play that.
You might remember how 2 years ago, the January 6th Select Committee hired an actual TV producer in order to make these really tight, well-edited hearings to be released to the public. In total, over the course of a 6-month-long period, 10 individual hearings were broadcast on TV. And one of the most unexpected and salacious things to come out of these hearings was the testimony of this woman right here, Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson. At the tail end of the Trump administration, Cassidy served as a top aide to Mr. Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff. And during Ms. Cassidy's testimony, which just for reference took up the entirety of hearing number 6, she made some rather shocking and salacious claims about what President Trump did in his car on January 6th. Here's a short snippet from her 2-hour-long hearing, and just for reference, when she says Bobby, she's referring to Mr. Robert Engel, Trump's lead Secret Service agent. Take a listen.
Tony proceeded to tell me that when the president got in the Beast, he was under the impression from Mr. Meadows that the off-the-record movement to the Capitol was still possible and likely to happen, but that Bobby had more information. So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing. The president had very strong, a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel, and when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
And so essentially, among her claims here was that President Trump became so livid and irate after not being taken to the U.S. Capitol that he himself lunged at the steering wheel of the vehicle, and when that didn't work out, he instead lunged at his own Secret Service agent in order to try and choke him out. That is the story that the January 6th Select Committee decided to broadcast to the entire country and the entire world in their televised, highly produced hearing. However, interestingly, there was another interview that the January 6th Select Committee conducted behind closed doors, which directly refuted the testimony of Ms. Cassidy. But for some reason, the transcript of that interview, it was not included in the final report released by the J6 Committee, much less in the televised hearings. However, with the Republicans now in charge of the House, they're beginning to dig through a lot of these previously unpublished interviews. In fact, House Republicans, they just released their own report, you can see it up on your screen, titled "On the Failures and Politicization of the January 6th Select Committee." And the newly released information contained in this report reveals, among many other things, that despite what was said in that televised hearing, President Trump, who was 73 years old at the time, did not fly across the SUV to try and grab the steering wheel from the driver, much less did he try to choke out his own Secret Service agent. Instead, here is what allegedly happened according to the man who was actually driving the car. Quote, President Trump and Robert Engel, his lead Secret Service agent, entered the SUV at about 1:10 p.m. after President Trump concluded his speech, which was delivered on the ellipse. President Trump asked Bob Engel if we could go to the Capitol and why couldn't we go to the Capitol, and was insistent on going to the Capitol. Later, the president was pushing pretty hard to go. Mr. Engel's response was essentially to tell him that we didn't have any people at the Capitol, we didn't have a plan in place, and that we needed to essentially go back to the White House and assess what our options were and wait till we can get a plan in place before we went down there. President Trump responded by saying he felt it would be fine because he wasn't concerned about the people at the Capitol, describing them as being his supporters. Mr. Engel consistently had the same response, that we didn't have a plan in place, we didn't have people at the Capitol, and that we needed to go back to the White House and reassess. And so the driver took President Trump as well as his lead Secret Service agent to the White House instead. And when asked about the president lunging for the steering wheel of the car, well, the driver said that basically no such thing ever happened. Quote, "I did not see him reach. President Trump never grabbed the steering wheel. I didn't see him lunge to try to get into the front seat at all." Furthermore, a little bit further down in the transcript, it shows that the J6 Select Committee, they asked the driver a specific question regarding what President Trump said, to which the driver responded, quote, "President Trump didn't say anything like, 'I'm the president. I'll decide where I get to go or where I'm going.'" And yet, for some odd reason, this testimony from the driver was not included in the final report. And instead, the January 6th committee decided to broadcast to the whole country and to the whole world Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson's account of what took place in that day, despite the fact that she wasn't there. They broadcast her testimony to the whole world, even though they had the interview with the driver who was literally in the car and who refuted the claims. Furthermore, and this is the part that makes the story perhaps even wilder, is the fact that Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson's account of what took place in that day was actually third-hand. She allegedly was told about what happened by a Secret Service agent named Anthony Ornado, who himself heard about what happened from another Secret Service agent. However, in the transcript of Mr. Ornado's interview, here's what he told the House committee. Quote, "This is not a story I recollect, and I don't recall that story happening. The first time I heard it was when Ms. Hutchinson testified about it during a public hearing." And so, just to recap, the January 6th committee decides to televise the most salacious account of what happened, despite having first and second-hand proof that it was likely false. Here's in fact how the newly released House report, the one that's criticizing the J6 Select Committee and uncovering all these previously unreleased transcripts, here's how they describe the whole situation. Quote, "Despite the driver of the president's SUV testifying under oath that the Hutchinson story was false, the Select Committee chose to validate and promote Hutchinson's version of the story as fact. The Select Committee hid the driver's full testimony and only favorably mentioned his testimony in its final report. It did not release the full transcript." And frankly, it's exactly stories like these which I believe reveal the underlying reason for why people trust the government less and less. Because if the January 6th Select Committee, if they just gave people a full accounting of what happened on that particular day without trying to skew and shape the narrative, then I believe people across the political aisle would accept it. They could use the report to figure out the facts, they could use the report to figure out what happened, and then they could use it to make up their own minds as to what they believe. However, when you have things like this, of one narrative being propped up while contradictory evidence is brushed under the rug and suppressed, well, frankly, just calls into question every single other thing in the report. Makes it, unfortunately, unbelievable. If you'd like to go deeper into the story, I'll throw my reference notes down into the description box below this video if you're the type of person that likes to dig into the weeds. And then, until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epic Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.
So more and more is being revealed about this sham J6 committee, and it's an infuriating fact that the committee deleted their files so that Congress was unable to oversee the truth.
And if you stand by your committee work and its facts, it's just telling that they chose to destroy the work.
And we have American citizens rotting in jail, and they're there, they're waiting to be processed. They're just there, thousands of them, and they keep adding to them all the time. It's unbelievable that they could continue with this process of justice being delayed, and therefore it's denied.
And, you know, I have a dear friend, Kathy,
Right.
and her significant other, who after attending the J6 rally outside the Capitol, he never entered the Capitol. He was a victim of the pre-dawn raid that you've seen so much happening over the last few years. He was dragged out of his home in his underwear and arrested by six to eight FBI agents.
I remember Pat. I remember she came to speak to our club, the Republican Club, and I'm just wondering what's happening with him now.
Well, he's winding down a 52-month sentence that he was given when he had his DC trial, about 8 or 9 months after it happened, after he was arrested. And actually, he's now serving the last part of his time in a local federal prison up in Northern California. He's been in actually 10 different facilities, prisons and facilities in the DC area and around Virginia, and now out in California. He has endured up to about 7 or 8 months of solitary confinement in this whole situation. He's amazing, though. I've spoken to him a couple of times since he's been in. He is able to call Kathy, and I was with her recently. And he's keeping up his spirits. He knows he'll be getting out. Hopefully, he'll be paroled the end of this year. But he often talks about how he's kept going because in the early months, especially in D.C. after it happened, the prisoners would sing the Star-Spangled Banner every night at 9 p.m. It was really inspiring.
Was that in all the prisons that he went to? It was.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
I don't
awesome.
think it's happening now in the federal prison that he's in now. I don't know if they're doing that because there's only 2 or 3 J6ers at this current prison.
Yeah, at the time. Wow. There's just so much chaos unfolding every day under this administration's radical left policies and executive orders. It's mind-blowing to try and keep up.
Yeah. We'll be covering more and more about J6 in the future because there is more and more information coming out, especially in Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee. And when we want to look more at the impact it's having on law-abiding citizens in our nation.
Well, there's so much collateral damage happening, and it's happening because of the open border policy that we have. And there's so much to focus on, but today we want to focus on the children because that is a huge part of the collateral damage. And we recently became aware of a film or a showing that was featured on the Epoch Times news program NTD. And they just released a moving testimony that Tim Tebow presented to Congress, to the Judiciary Committee. And this testimony came before Jim Jordan. He had a committee on crime and federal government surveillance, and that was on March 6th. And he was asking that more resources be allocated to help fight child sexual exploitation.
So yeah, let's take a look and see. We have that video too.
Great.
Why we're here today is to talk about the MVP. Not the MVP I chased most of my life. Couldn't get, by the way, but chased. Not the MVP most of you are probably thinking, no, not the most valuable player. A more important MVP, the most vulnerable people. That's why we're here today. A year and a half ago, this awesome lady to my left, Camille Cooper, joined our team. And I asked Camille, I said, Camille, what breaks your heart the most? And she wrote down the number 20,000. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, it's a problem. I said, what problem is that? It's the 20,000 boys and girls that have been abused and raped. And their images and videos have been captured, but nobody has been able to identify them. They're unknown. Until someone knows them, how could somebody rescue them? And I knew that day that my heart was broken and my eyes were open and we had to do something. So I said, Camille, what do you think is the best approach? And she said, bring the best teams and players together. So we convened a meeting in Lyon, France with amazing frontline heroes. Homeland Security, Interpol, Europol, NCMEC, ICMEC, ONIMI, Google, so many people and many more came to the table with really 2 goals. The first one, how many boys and girls are unknown, are unidentified? And it wasn't 20,000. It was over 50,000. And the second goal is how do we protect them? And that's where Operation Renewed Hope was born, led by HSI just a few miles away from here. And so many partners from around the world. And in 15 days, they were able to identify 316 boys and girls. 316 boys and girls. It was an incredible operation, but that's a tiny den in what we're called to get to. It was amazing work, but it was so small in comparison. And so why we're here today is to be able to ask you to say yes to a bill that we're going to present. And this bill really has one goal: to build a rescue team. because there's so many frontline warriors and heroes, but there's just not enough. And we need to support them, and we need more of them to get to these 50,000 boys and girls. So this bill is strictly to create a rescue team that has the funding, the support, the training, the technology, so that they can get to these 50,000. You know, I've had the privilege of playing for a lot of sports teams in my life. And almost all of them, we've had incredible resources to give us a better chance at winning a game, something that ultimately, as much as we care about it, doesn't matter. Why would we not give as much, if not more, resources to the frontline heroes that are going after the most vulnerable boys and girls on the planet? You see, when Operation Renewed Hope identified that 316, and out of all those that were rescued, more than half of them were right here in the US. And when you extrapolate those numbers, that means that there's thousands of boys and girls that are starving for hope in our backyard. And we have the chance to bring hope to those that are starving for it, if we're willing. But honestly, my words will probably fall flat today. So instead of hearing from me, I would rather you hear from one of my heroes, a young girl who went through extreme abuse for 7 years. And almost every night she got raped for 7 years. And in the middle of her abuse, this is what she writes. Rescue me. Help me. Monsters are chasing. Can't you see? Monsters are whispering. Can't you hear? Monsters are shouting. You're nothing. Can't you feel my pain? Monsters are pushing. End it all. Just jump. Can't you hear all the whys I'm asking? Monsters are laughing. You're all alone in this. Can someone please rescue me? This girl and thousands of boys and girls just like her, they're calling out to you and to me. And how many times in my life have I missed the call? Have I missed the mark? Unfortunately, too many. But would today be a day that we wouldn't miss the mark, that we would hear her cries, that we would hear her call, and we would answer the call? Because every single one of those boys and girls is worth us answering the call and doing everything we can so that they can experience the faith, hope, and love that they deserve. Not the bondage and torture that they're in right now. I believe if we build that rescue team, we will have a chance of getting to every one of those boys and girls.
Ro, was such a moving testimony. That young man, I'm so impressed. Tim's foundation that he talks about is Operation Renewed Hope. And its goal is in the pursuit of the 50,000 unidentified children.
Right. And also I found that nearly 85 million pictures and videos depicting child sexual abuse worldwide, and that was reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and that was in 2021. I kind of wonder if that number's gone up or down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we can guess it's probably going up. This is truly a public health crisis. What we can do, we can pray for the kids, for families, and we can also arm our families with resources. His foundation, Ro, as we've looked at it, it's such a great source for online safety resources for people of all ages, besides the children. It's called NetSmarts, NETSMARTZ, and it's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's online safety education program. It provides age-appropriate videos and activities to help children to be safer online, with the goal of helping these children to become more aware of the potential online risks and empowering them then to help prevent victimization by making safer choices. I know I'm going to be passing on this information to my teen grandkids.
Yes, even teens.
4 of them.
So yeah, we just saw, again, we aired at the PAC Center last weekend, the movie, The Sound of Freedom, and that was a 2023 blockbuster film that was the true story of Tim Ballard, who was a government agent, and he testified before Congress. And he was talking about the travesty and the impact that sex and human trafficking is having on thousands of young children in America and the whole world.
We have another opportunity to protect kids in California, Ro. I happened to be at a meeting last week with Bill Asaley. He's a Republican Assembly member who is in Riverside. And he has authored a new ballot initiative that we're trying to get on the November ballot. And it's called Protect Kids California. It has a three-pronged purpose. The first one requires school, and we're going to put it up on the screen here. It requires schools to notify parents if their child requests to be treated in a different gender, and requires parental consent before a school socially transitions a child.
Okay, it just seems unbelievable to me that we actually have to legislate this kind of behavior
Yes.
for protecting our children.
Yes.
And then it also has another aspect to it that prevents children from using puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, genital surgeries, and mastectomies that lead to irreversible harm and sterilization.
The third prong, or the third purpose, it protects girls' opportunities, safety, and privacy by ensuring school sports programs and facilities are segregated based on biological sex. Right. We have the whole issue with Riley Gaines. She's made national news now. And, she worked hard for all these years to reach the goal and become such a champion. And in a moment, it was taken away by a person who is a male.
Yes, yes. So this is a nonpartisan issue, and it has received strong support from all California registered voters. So we're hoping that this will get our petition signed and create this bill to bring before the legislature for November.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of the bill and why Bill Asaley was so passionate about this. He actually launched this bill, Ro, after he received emails from parents reporting the schools are reassigning genders and are keeping it secret. And he told us at this meeting that the schools actually have two sets of files. One is for that the family is able to see, and the other is secret. The schools also refused a hearing, saying that the people who want this bill are endangering the kids. This bill is dangerous. They're saying this bill is dangerous.
That's the usual projecting, isn't it? Whatever they're doing, they're projecting on the other side. So let's talk about the support. There's 2/3 of Republicans and Democrats that support this bill. And the Rasmussen poll shows that parental rights is a big issue. So we're hoping to get this on the ballot for November.
With regard to this petition, Ro, our goal is to collect 850,000 signatures, and because we need 546,000 plus, which must be valid. So our club, over the next month, we've already started it. Last month, we did it at our meeting. We also brought the petition to the movie, and everyone at the movie signed it. Our club plans to play this big role and collect as many signatures as possible.
Right.
We will set petition signing up at our future meeting on April 5th. And also, we're going to plan to have tabletops throughout the village, because we only have until the end of April to actually get all these signatures.
Right. I'm planning to pick up my own copy of the petition. This is what it looks like. And I'll be taking it around to my neighbors and friends and family. There's people everywhere that we can approach, and who wouldn't want to support this? It's really important for our children.
So yes, we hope everyone will be able to be involved and talk with their neighbors. We can get this on the ballot, and it's just going to, if we all do just our little bit. So please call me, Pat Micone. My phone number is 714-697-0014, and I will be able to get petitions to you over this next month.
Well, thank you, Pat. And we hope you got something out of our presentation today. We hope you'll take it with you and hold it in your heart and take action. So important. So thank you for joining us. And if you have any comments or questions, just send us an email at lightonamerica.lw@gmail.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a great month.
Thank you.